I hope that history treats them kind. This is a show where I talk about the artists I love, why I love them, and why they were a part of my life from early on. Welcome to Influencers. I'm TC Kirkham, the Kirkham Report. This week on Influencers is an act that I know a lot of vinyl community people are going to be going, oh God, are you serious? But you know something? For all that they did for the few years they were really popular, they put a big smile on my face, and I enjoyed their music intensely. So let's talk about them. Even though most people think of them as simple pop pablum, there was more to them overall, and so we'll talk about that aspect as well. I'm talking about these people, Daryl Dragon and Tony Tennille, Captain and Tennille. This is their 1975 debut album, Love Will Keep Us Together. Dogs Brody and Peaches, if I'm not mistaken. Um, it's been a long time since I was a member of their fan club, and I don't remember the names for sure of the Bulldogs. Um, but Captain Tennille hit at a time when I was really getting into music. It was the summer of 1975 when Love Will Keep Us Together was all over the place. And this album brought it to my attention. I received this album as a present for Christmas that year, but I had known their stuff before that because they'd had a couple of singles prior to that. Love Will Keep Us Together, of course, ended up the number one song of the year on the Billboard chart, and it ended up winning a Grammy for Record of the Year the following year. It was a very popular song, a very up song, and as Tony says at the end of the song, Sedaka is back. Neil Sedaka had made a triumphant return to the pop chart with Laughter in the Rain just a few months before. This album shows off Tony's true vocal ability and Daryl's keyboard wizardry, and it's a terrific album that has 11 great songs on it, 10 vocals and one instrumental. Daryl did an instrumental on all of their A&M albums, and it was terrific to hear it all the way around. Of course, Love Will Keep Us Together was the first single. They followed it up with a song they'd originally released a year and a half earlier on their very own Butterscotch Castle label called The Way I Want to Touch You, that also became a top 10 hit for them. And this is an original pressing. It's split at the top, as you can see. Has the original lyric sleeve and is on A&M Records. I was a big fan, and I was big enough to pick up another album of theirs as soon as I had the chance through Columbia House, the music service. The same album in Spanish, Captain and Tennille Por Amor Viviremos. This was recorded entirely in Spanish. All of the songs, the same exact lineup, are on both albums. This one in English, this one in Spanish. I don't know whether Tony spoke fluent Spanish or whether she learned it phonetically, but the truth is the songs are just as good in Spanish as they are in English. And I don't speak Spanish, but I love Latin music, so I mean, blame Mocedades and Eris too for that back when I was even younger, 1974. Um, it's a great album and just as good as the English language album. Of course, it doesn't come with a lyric sleeve, unfortunately. Oops, excuse me. But it's one of the only Spanish language album I had until 1990, I think. Oh no, I had Menudo before that, so yeah, let's talk about that later. Um, they were pop, but they became a sensation They appeared regularly during the summer of '75 on the Jim Stafford Show, which was a summer replacement series on ABC. They weren't regulars, but they were on, I think, a little more than half of the 8 or 10 episodes that he did. And it ended up being a trial for something I'll talk about in a moment. The second album came out in 1976, early 1976, just a few months. Of course, this is back when artists released 2 or 3 albums a year. We're talking, not the 3 or 4 year span that they have now. Song of Joy was released in early 1976 and featured another top 10 hit, a monster called Lonely Night Angel Face. That was followed up with their cover of Shop Around and their infamous cover of America's Muskrat Love. The sad thing about Song of Joy is the inner sleeves, which has great pictures of Tony and Daryl, is that it's the songs that weren't singles that are actually the songs that I ended up loving. The title track, which, if I'm not mistaken, let me check real quick. No, I'm sorry, it's Billy Preston. I was thinking it was Leon Russell. Billy Preston and Raquel Boren wrote the title track from the album. Song of Joy is one of my favorite songs that they ever did. It is terrific. Of course, everybody knew Lonely Night Angel Face. It was another Sedaka song. And then Shop Around, Smokey Robinson and the Miracles, and Muskrat Love, which was America. Muskrat Love is reviled, I think, more because of all the sound effects that Daryl put into it with synthesizer, to the point where it's actually been picked as one of the worst songs of all time, which is too bad because it's really kind of a cute song. It was no different than what America did a few years earlier, but I can understand how it gets under some people's skins. My favorite instrumental by Daryl that they did on any of the albums is on this album as well. It's a song called Going Bananas. My friend Eric Lyon painstakingly recreated it for us to use as a theme song a few years ago on various things. This also contains their version of Paul Stuckey's wedding song, There Is Love, which became a hit on easy listening radio, although it was never released as a single. It was the flip side, I believe, of Muskrat Love. People were not giving them enough credit, but they were popular enough during the release of this album to do their own television variety show. Now, I love Daryl and Tony. Always love their music. It ranks up there with Pink Lady and Jeff as one of the worst variety shows ever made. Tony went on in the 80s to do a number of Broadway shows, including Victor Victoria, which I heard she was absolutely stupendous in. But in the 70s, I saw her on Love Boat, saw her on Fantasy Island. She really wasn't very good of an actress at the time. That grew with her. And this period where the variety show was on, I mean, I have the DVD. I'll be honest, I have the DVD. But it's great music. Let's stay away from the comedy sketches and just listen to the music, okay? During the release of the television show, the third album was released, Come In From the Rain. This one actually pretty much bombed at pop radio, although it did get considerable airplay on AC radio. Come In From the Rain, released in 1977, featured the title track, which was the first single. No, excuse me, that was the second single. The first single was Can't Stop Dancing, which hit, I think, number 13 or something like that on the pop chart. And the third single was a song called Circles, which did not chart on either chart, although our local AC station in Spokane played it quite often. Circles is one of my favorite songs by them. I think the most interesting thing about this album is that they had started to do different directions. These first two albums were straight pop. Here they started doing some experimental stuff that was really some of the best stuff they did. Tony's version of Easy Evil on side one is fantastic. It, of course, was written by Alan O'Day, who would that summer also was on the chart with Undercover Angel and had written Helen Reddy's Angie Baby a few years earlier. Um, Easy Evil was done on John Travolta's first album, I think, or maybe his second album. And his version is okay, but Tony really hits what you need to hit here. It's fantastic. She also recorded Sad Eyes, another Neil Sedaka song. And of course, the end theme from their show, We Never Really Say Goodbye, was featured on this album, and we used that as our end theme on Subject Cinema for years. Um, but Circles is a little song about falling in love and someone who's resistant to falling in love. And I always thought it was a really terrific song. It deserved better than it got. Coming from the Rain, Tony does a spectacular version of it, but there are terrific versions out there by Melissa Manchester, by Jane Oliver, a number of other versions that are just as exquisite. It's one of the better songs to come out of the 70s that's of that style. And Tony was the first, I believe, to have a hit with it. Coming from the Rain did actually hit the AC chart. That's what the back looks like. Now, after those three albums came the Greatest Hits album. I didn't dig it out because it's on a different shelf. But Captain and Tennille Greatest Hits didn't have anything new on it. It had their album tracks, favorites. It had all their singles. And, of course, by that time, they had adapted this Captain and Tennille logo, which they would abandon after the third album and the Greatest Hits album. In 1978, after they left their variety show after just one season, they wanted to get back to their music. They went back to Vegas, started doing touring again. They went back into the studio after Coming from the Rain came out and came up with their fourth album for A&M. It would be their final album for A&M. Darryl produced it himself. It's called Dream. The first single, I'm on My Way, stiffed at Top 40 radio, but the second single, another Neil Sedaka song, You Never Done It Like That, straight to the top 10 in the summer of 1978, summer and fall of 1978. And they followed it up with another great song called You Need a Woman Tonight, which peaked at number 40 on the chart. This album is my favorite Captain and Tennille album. It has some great stuff on it. Again, there's taken some chances here with Dixie Lullaby, which is a very almost what you might get if you cross pop, synthesizer, and bluegrass. It was terrific. I love the singles from this album, and Darryl's solo here, D Keyboard Blues, is it's a very bluesy synthesizer keyboard number that everybody likes, that hears it, and it's a shame it didn't get more attention. Back to the Island is another great song on this album, and I think that's probably inspired by where they got the cover artwork from. And again, great picture sleeve with great pictures of Darryl and Tony and the lyrics. Dream is my favorite Captain and Tennille album. I gotta say that. In 1978, A&M Records had started moving toward a different direction. They were pairing with Virgin to bring in some new wave acts, and some other acts were coming in, and they were moving away from that more pop/easy listening sound that was best represented A&M from the Carpenters, Captain Tennille, and Herb Alpert, although Herb would have a monster hit in 1979 with Rise. So when their contract ended, they jumped to Casablanca Records, and Casablanca Records gave them two really interesting albums. The first of which, Make Your Move, was a lot bigger hit than Dream had been, and featured their second and final number one pop hit, Do That To Me One More Time, which hit number one in late 79 or early 1980. Also, neither one of the other singles took off, which is interesting. Love on a Shoestring, which my mother detested because it talks about having an affair, and their version of Happy Together, A Fantasy, which is the Turtle song. Everybody has always the critics have said it's garbage, but you know, I've always loved their cover of Happy Together. It's put together almost like an Arabian dream, with Daryl doing these intricate keyboards and Tony's vocals being terrific. I Wish No Love in the Morning had been a single, which I loved that song. And it was very bizarre for me to see Captain and Tennille in this way. Tony completely changed her hairstyle. She went blonde, made it a little bit longer, got rid of the bob cut that she and Dorothy Hamill helped make popular in the 70s. And it was weird to see them on, like I said, on the Casablanca label, because I was used to A&M. Casablanca to me represented Kiss and Cher, among other things at the time. Another great song on this album is Deep in the Dark. Very guttural sex song. Honestly, it's a sex song. It's not, you know, up-tempo, Barry White sex song. It's a very deep, dark, guttural sex song, and one of their best songs ever. But it's not as strong as Dream was, because I like the sound that they went for. I mean, not to say that this is a bad album. It isn't. It's the best of the two albums on Casablanca. But I really had hoped for more, and there was only 8 songs on here, where I was used to 11 or 12 from them. Finally, in 1980, Captain Tennille, in early 1981, I believe, actually, is when this came out, was their final album for Casablanca, and what ended up being their final U.S. release for over 20 years, Keepin' Our Love Warm. This album stiffed, and it stiffed for a reason. It's, number one, it doesn't quite gel. There's so many different styles on here. And number two, I wish there had been, I hate saying this, because, you know, is there, what, I mean, when record company executives look at the music that an artist is producing, they look at, is there a single? You know, they've been wrong about Hanson numerous times, which we'll talk about in weeks ahead. This album produced a great song, a great first single that I loved, that stiffed on the charts, called "This Is Not the First Time." And of the rest of the album, "Keepin' Our Love Warm" was the second single. It was released. It did well on the AC chart again, but my choice would have been Tony's remake of "Until You Come Back to Me," which I think was the superior song on the album. They do a cover of "Gentle Stranger" here, the way Tony originally intended it to be done. She wrote that song, but A&M wouldn't let them do it that way on Love Will Keep Us Together. So when they got to Casablanca, she made it as the way she wanted it, and was happy with it. But in all honesty, I'm not a big fan of this album. It's the one album that I'm not a terribly big fan of. Although, and we're going to get to an although, I don't have the final album that they did, of all new material, although I've heard it on Spotify. It was only released in Australia until 2017, when it was released to the world. It's called "More Than Love," and quite honestly, it's the songs are well performed. The problem is, they're not great songs. Outside of their version of "Don't Call It Love," which had later been a hit for, I think, Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers, I'm not enamored with that album either. And I can understand why it was never released in the States until 2017. Now, going back to what I have on CD, and there is a box set out of all of these. I want to get it eventually, but I haven't got it yet. But there was an album released in, I believe it was 2005. Let me check the date real quick here. And of course, I didn't save the Wikipedia page I was going to look up. So, guess what, folks? You get to stay with me. It was an album that was covers of their own songs. And it also had some original stuff on it. And it was called 20 Years of Romance, and I believe it came out in 2000. That's what I'm checking right here. 1995. Oh, of course, that makes sense because 20 Years of Romance in 75 was the first year. 1995's 20 Years of Romance featured some remakes of their earlier stuff, re-recordings of Love Will Keep Us Together and their love songs, and a great original song by Tony called Love Survives. It was about how to deal with a loved one's loss. There have been a couple of great songs before that. There's several great songs about dealing with the loss of a friend. Nelson's gorgeous Love Me Today, which is just my all-time favorite. One Sweet Day by Mariah Carey and Boyz II Men. Too Soon from Robbie Neville. And Love Survives by Captain and Tennille. All great songs to remember people with. I wish that had been a bigger hit. It was released as a single off of that album, which came out on the Nouveau label, but when it finally came out wide, it was on KTEL. Um, and it deserved better than it got. It was mostly remakes of their earlier stuff, and I wish they had done better overall with it. Now, they would not release another album in the States until 2007. 2007 brought their very first Christmas album, The Secret of Christmas. It remains the final recording from the Captain and Tennille, and it is a classic Christmas album. Was the first place I ever heard I Want a Hippopotamus for Christmas, which I guess is Kim has known since she was a kid, but I had never heard of it. I love Tony Tennille's version of that song. They did they did a couple of originals, but mostly it was classic Christmas stuff. And it was a lot of fun, and if you can still find it, it does, I think its last re-release was maybe 5 years ago. It's worth tracking down and adding to the collection of Captain and Tennille. They didn't do much else. One of the songs from the Christmas album, Tahoe Snow, was released as a single only to the fan club in 1983, I believe it was. The fan club eventually ceased, I believe, in 1985, if I remember right, because I was a member for a number of years. And Tony did some solo stuff. I actually recently purchased some of her big band stuff. I have not had a chance to listen to it yet, but she did a lot of that in the mid 80s. And of course, she did host her own talk show for a few months in 80 and 81 called The Tony Tennille Show. We lost Daryl in 2019, I believe. Let me go check real quick. It has been, January of 2019. Tony is still going. It is, they will always be one of my favorite acts, and I love their music intensely. If I were to rank their songs, and I probably should save that for an episode of Rank This, but I love Circles from Come In From the Rain. Love Will Keep Us Together will always be a favorite, along with their cover of Disney Girls, which is a Beach Boys song from Love Will Keep Us Together. I love the Spanish language version of Love Will Keep Us Together, Por Amor Viviremos. This Is Not the First Time is the one really good song on Keeping Our Love Warm. I love that. Do That To Me One More Time. You Need a Woman Tonight, and You Never Done It Like That. Mostly the singles, except for off of Come In From the Rain and Song of Joy. I love the title track from Song of Joy and Easy Evil from Come In From the Rain. Fantastic numbers. And Deep in the Dark from Make Your Move. Some really interesting stuff for them. Are they going to be a lasting influence? I don't know. People from my age group, and I was a teenager in the 70s, a preteen and a teenager. We tend to like the same kind of stuff, the same kind of music. Carpenters, Partridge Family, Captain and Tennille, ABBA. Some of us like disco, like me. Not everybody does, though. Captain Tennille have delivered two legacy songs that are still heard on oldies radio. Love Will Keep Us Together and Do That To Me One More Time. And if you're on the right station, and they do exist, There is a local oldies station in Boston that I have heard both Muskrat Love and Shop Around on. I will say that they have a lasting legacy as a very popular act from the 70s and early 80s who are fondly remembered by their fans, like me. Um, I I was very saddened by Daryl's passing. He dealt with a version of Parkinson's disease for about 10 years, was unable to play the keyboard anymore. It led eventually to Tony and he divorcing, although they stayed close friends, and she was indeed at his side when he passed in January of 2019. Um, they were a couple till the very end, even though they weren't married anymore. And it it was a very interesting time. If you've never really gotten into pop music, if you're not a big pop fan, pop top 40, AC, maybe even what we around here call awfully light FM, uh, sheep in the big city joke, where it's very light AC, which is the Captain and Tennille's forte. Also, a lot of Carpenter's music fits there from a few weeks ago. Um, if you don't like that, you probably aren't going to be that big of a fan of theirs, except maybe for love it, love will keep us together, and do that to me one more time because they're both well known. Um, but for me, they always have a soft spot in my heart. I will always enjoy their music, and I will always enjoy, in a train wreck sort of way, their one season of the Captain and Tennille show. Um, it is a lasting legacy that is a moment in time. Some artists transcend time. And while those two songs will transcend time, the rest of the Captain Tennille's library is a moment in time. It brings to mind that period from 1975 to 1981 where they were extremely popular. And whether or not they would still be having hits later, had they continued to record, is unknown. They played. Tony continued to do stage work, and Daryl was with her, throughout a lot of it until he got sick. Um, in the 80s and 90s, and they did do new stuff in 2000 in 1995, but um, overall, they're going to be remembered for those two songs, and maybe because of the extreme amount of vitriol against it, their cover of Muskrat Love. And I think they deserve better than that. There's a lot of great stuff on the deep tracks on some of these albums, particularly on Make Your Move and Come In From the Rain and Dream. And I hope that history treats them kind. They will always treat them kind as individuals. Tony is a spectacular vocalist who will always be acknowledged so. And Daryl was a member, they were both technically members of the Beach Boys for many years. Daryl played their keyboards, and that's how they got together when she became the only Beach girl in the early 70s. Um, I think that they deserve better than they get. And if you want to try them out, all of their albums, including the hard to find, I can't, More Than Dancing, what is the name of that album? The Australian release, that was to be their last release, um, was on CD. It was called It's called More Than Love. Are all on Spotify. I don't think 20 Years of Romance is. Because they have it in the compilation. So no, it's not showing here on Spotify. But that Love Survives is a great song if you can find it, and it should be checked out. I'll have more artists of all types and sizes and shapes and colors and sounds as we continue to go through this new show of mine and talk about the people that are important to my musical upbringing. For influencers, I'm TC Kirkham. Thank you, Tony. Thank you, Daryl. And thank you guys for watching. We'll see you soon. Ciao, baby.